So we'll probably kick off. So kia ora, namaste, and good morning, everyone. Very warm welcome to our audience who have joined us virtually from various parts of the world and also physically at the Sheesh Mahal. Good morning. A very big thank you to the team at IC3 who have literally worked tirelessly over the last 12 months to continue this momentum for the conference under absolutely exceptionally harsh circumstances. And I'm really glad to finally have this conference. And from what we've been seeing over the last few days, there have been some really exciting and engaging conversations. So our session today will explore responsibilities in ensuring an ethical approach to student counseling and recruiting. Honor Code, which deep dives into 3 key aspects of student interaction: care, connect, and counsel. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to the audience our esteemed panelist. We have with us Mr. Samir Arora, Vice Principal, Legacy School, Bangalore. Samir is an educator with over 24 years of school experience in teaching across all levels of school, integrating pedagogical innovations in curriculum, fostering partnerships with educational organizations, individuals, experts, and members of the community and school administrations. He has volunteered with many organizations and has been awarded for his distinguished services to the Asian Regional Space Settlement Design Competition and also the Duke of Edinburgh Award. He has also been awarded Claus Nobel Educator of Distinction for Excellence in Teaching by the National Society of High School Scholars, USA. Welcome on board, Samir. I would like to now also introduce our university panelists. So we have with us Dr. Santosh Kumar Kurdakar. He is the Dean Faculty of Liberal Education at Flame University, Pune. Dr. Santosh holds a master's in physics from IIT Madras and a PhD from the Institute of Mathematical Science, Chennai. A theoretical physicist by training, his research interests are in the applications of field theory in high energy and condensed matter physics, dynamic systems and mathematical modeling in the social and management science. He is passionate about quantitative models and has successfully completed multiple industrial projects. His consulting domain of expertise lies in development, testing, validation, and deployment of mathematical, statistical, and machine learning models for consumer research, demand forecasting, and optimization. Dr. Kurdakar has been associated with Flame University since its inception. Welcome on board, Dr. Santosh. And finally, we have Andrea Mcleod Kareem. She's the International Regional Manager, International Recruitment and Business Development area, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Andrea holds a master's in international urban and environmental management and has a career that has spanned the nonprofit sector, government, immigration, and now international education. Andrea is based in Mumbai and enjoys the challenge of helping students find their right course to fulfill their goals and the collaborative nature of her work with university partners. Welcome all of you. And just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Jugnu Roy. I am the country manager for Education New Zealand, based in New Delhi at the New Zealand High Commission. Of course, working from home right now. And with that, with the introductions done, should we dive into the questions straight away? I think we're doing good on time.
Yes,
so I'm going to start my first questions for the panelists, and we'll first go across to our university sector panelists. For both Dr. Santosh and Andrea, how would you define ethics? What do you think that would mean for you from a university standpoint? Andrea, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I'll speak about ethics from a university standpoint from a New Zealand point of view. I think when we define ethics, it's about openness, transparency, it's about honesty, it's about the types of policies and the practices that you have in place in your organization. So in New Zealand, it was the first country in the world to institute a formal code of pastoral care for the care of international students. That was back in 2002. So it is actually legislated by government what actions institutions need to take if they want to recruit international students to ensure that when they come to our country, they are well looked after, they are not being made false promises, and they are receiving the highest standards of international education. So that code of practice actually outlines everything from what type of information you have to provide to a student when you're recruiting them, ensuring that your marketing strategies are honest and they are transparent, the types of accommodation that should be provided to students, the types of services that should be provided to students, and what your responsibilities and duties of care are to a student who enrolls in your university or in your institution. So when we talk about ethics, I think there's the practices that we follow in our day-to-day life, but it is also important that we basically that we explore how we can then formalize these into codes of practices or into legislation or into other policies within our own institutions and our own schools.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. And I definitely agree. Code of Pastoral Care was one of the path-breaking thing for New Zealand, and New Zealand was the first country to introduce that. We'll go over to Dr. Santosh now. So, sir, if you can share from your perspective, how would you define ethics?
Thanks, Jugnu. I think, I echo Andrea's points, and especially the New Zealand model seems to be a good model for us to implement in the country. Because I don't think, we work as much on ethics in India as much as we should do. We introduce a course in ethics to all our students, but then, does it, translate into an ethical code of conduct for the employees or for the staff or for the admission counselors? I'm not really sure of that, at least in our institution. But I think that's a good starting point. But to summarize, what I feel about ethics, especially admission ethics, because students come with various expectations, is that, the admission ethics should lie in serving the best interest of the students, irrespective of what the counselors or institutions' business imperatives are. Right? It means putting the success and well-being of the student at the forefront of the counseling process. I think, irrespective of where we draw our salaries from, there is an implicit obligation towards the person who is seeking our advice. And we should put their interest in and see where these things match with the institution that we are representing or the businesses that we are representing. I think this comes about because of a shared responsibility towards students. And I think, being honest about it, and as long as the counselors are aware that they have to be honest about it, I think that should do half the job. There's a lot of other, the code of conduct definitely has to come in. But then I think that's my perspective. And that has been my institution's perspective for quite some time.
Absolutely, absolutely, totally agree with that. And I think students' well-being and their interest is definitely at the heart of all of this. So we'll probably beam across to Sheesh Mahal now. And Samir, you're there, right? Can you, you've been with the school sector for over 24 years, and from your perspective, what is an ethics guide? Would you like to talk to our audience about it?
Sure, thank you so much. And I think I'm just going to hang on to 2 points which Andrea mentioned, the Code of Pastoral Care. And we are happy to read it through with you and understand how did you arrive at that. That's an interesting observation. And I think another thing which Professor Santosh talked about, in India, we work on a lot of implicit obligations. But how do you translate the implicit obligations into explicit code of conduct, which is extremely important, because implicit is very subjective. What is right for you may be very different from someone else. So I think considering that, I tried doing a survey. Can we have presentation, please? A survey with my fellow counselors across the country. So there were the participation of over over, I would say, about 50 counselors. So you see, the first thing which I asked them, do you have an ethics guide? You can see the response. And isn't it alarming that most of the schools in the school sector are running the counseling department, but they don't have an ethical guide to refer to? So how do you sort of move from here? And the next question, could you just make the slide a little bigger, probably? Thank you. Yes, I think do you refer to any resource guide or ethics in career counseling? So again, the observation was very interesting. You can see what is a small number of percentage of schools which are actually referring to the ethical guide. So this brought me to the interesting observation that when I tried finding out the definition of ethics, I couldn't come across any standardized definition of ethics for school counseling. So I tried to arrive at sort of reading a couple of references to arrive at my own definition. To me, I think as a school, ethics are guiding acceptable professional principles and standards, normative in nature, that govern relationships. Now, what relationships are we talking about? We're talking about between the counselors with all stakeholders. Now, who are these stakeholders that engage in the counseling processes? So, who all are involved in the counseling processes? Students, parents, school leadership, and universities. So that's sort of a larger definition I've sort of arrived at, and I'm just going to float it to the counselor community and see if they can contribute to it. But it's important as counseling department that do we have an explicit understanding and definition of ethics, first of all. Going on to the next slide, you will see only 29% said they refer to an ethical guide, or they even know that there is a document called ethical guide. So let's read some of the comments which came from the survey. The first one was, I'm not aware of any such standardized guide available for a counselor's reference. This was over 40% counselors who responded to the survey. Another, generally we go by standard policies by universities. Now the school ethics code of conduct cannot be governed by university, which is an external body. So that's very interesting. Driven with internal ethical compass. So again, it's subjective. What is my ethical compass may be very different from Kshitij's context and everybody else's context. I've never referred to any guide, just practice based on the BPS. It's, I think, British Psychological Society and Australian Psychological Society guidelines learnt as a part of the psychology course, which has nothing to do with college counseling. I'm using that as my moral compass with somebody who's trained in psychology. It's majorly dependent on the practices followed in the fraternity. So you are basically dependent on external resources, but as a school you don't have anything. So that is what brings me to this beautiful document. It's called Guide to Ethical Practices. This was initially introduced as Principles of Good Practice and later the Code of Ethics and Professional Practices by NACAC. This is a free open resource. Please download it for universities and as well as schools. This is where we should be probably a starting point to start looking at what kind of ethical policies we want to start build in our system. Now, the larger question is why ethics? Why are we talking about ethics? You know, this is a very interesting quote which came across. It's knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do, right? It's a very thin line and a tightrope walk. And counselors play a very, very important role in identifying the aspirations of the students under their care. And when you say aspirations, not just in terms of what they want to do, but understanding their context, holistic understanding, what we call it, the context, the academics, experience, capabilities, financial, capabilities. First of all, when I meet parents, I understand whether do they have, the social preparation for the child, financial preparation for the child, psychological preparation for the child to be able to go to university in other city or country. And I think this is to help students make a decision about post-secondary education while cultivating and maintaining a relationship with different stakeholders without any vested interest. Now that is very key. Vested interest could be personal biases, which if I and Anjali are friend, but I think Huron is a great university, which I genuinely believe in. But if my student is aspiring to do something in a more competitive environment, would he be a great fit at Huron, which is more collaborative environment? So how do you keep your biases away while making a decision is also sort of an implicit understanding of ethics, but how do you make it explicit? I think very interesting ethical dilemmas which counselors face. Again, I asked my counselor fellows, what are the ethical dilemmas you face? Parental pressure. I don't think it's a rocket science. Everybody knows that how parents knock at our doors with stick and carrot approach, both approaches, that they need good predicted LORs and good grades and good LORs. We also come across child's aspirations versus parents' expectations. Parent says, I have a parent walking into my office, he says, how does my child decide? I got to pay for the university, so I get to decide. So how do you balance that? Child's aspirations, abilities versus university choices. Everybody wants to go to Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton, right? Yale, Brown. Who's going to go to the other universities? Do they even have capability? Even if they land up there, would they be able to survive in a 4 years or 5 years of competitive environment? application cap. How many applications should you allow your children? Because a lot of time counselors tell me, US, it doesn't matter, I just have to click it. But how do you come as a community and say this is what standard practice should be across the entire country? Why should it just be across the school? And I think one thing we take for granted is times of counselors. It's freely available for all of us, right? So why do we do more than 10, 8, 14, whatever the number is? Early decision versus changing stand on college choice. Suddenly you made an early decision, which is binding. And in the last minute you say, I don't want to go because I can't afford. How do you do that? So what is the ethics policy of school where you can say, stating implicitly in the beginning of grade 11 that if you back out from earlier decision, the school will withdraw your support. We will not submit your final grades. So how do you make it binding? Because it's not fair on university part to give an early decision in a child's favor and the child backing out. Decision on counselors nominated scholarship for an uber competitive pool of students. You have 10 students who are all 99%er. How do you decide? Do you decide? Then you are very powerful. I will create a bench of people and sort of do voting, right? So these are some of the ethical dilemmas, ED versus counselor nominated scholarship. Now I did an early decision. I nominated a child for a counselor, as a counselor I nominated a child for scholarship. Child got the scholarship, now he wants to leave away ED. Now how do you protect university's interest? Because you're not there just to protect the interest of the student. You also have to protect the interest of the community you're working with. So another double dipping, paying in more than 2 countries. I just turned my blind eye, sorry folks, I'm just really sort of guilty of that this year, but generally I don't allow that. I said choose your university and go there. Inflated resumes, we come across this, you feel like a resumes of a corporate head of an organization, not sort of typically a 14 or a 17-year child. And of course, a pressure of school managements, of Ivy League placements, financial aids, target scholarships. I'm really sorry, but a lot of time I see on
Samir, sorry, I'm just coming in. I'm just conscious of time.
Yes, last one.
We've got a couple of things more to cover, so maybe we can come back to it.
Jugnu, just last point, then you can take it forward.
Sure.
So I think school managements, please, this is leadership. Please do not judge your counselors based on the number of amount of scholarship and financial aid they're able to get, the number of Ivy Leagues they're able to get, to the happiness quotient index saying that, okay, are my children happy where they're going? Do they meet their expectations? I think I'll stop here, Jugnu. Over to you.
Great. I think that was a really, really interesting conversation, and I feel really bad that I had to interrupt. And but we can definitely go back to it if we have time. But this also brings us. There were some really interesting things that Samir highlighted about how many schools have an ethics policy in place or an ethics guide in place. I was just thinking we could probably run a quick poll, just to show of hands, both virtually or physically, wherever you're present, on how many of you are aware or you follow an ethics guide in your school or the institute that you represent. Do you really have an ethics guide, and do you follow it? Just a quick show of hands, either virtually or physically. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we have to be honest, right? So I think it's about 40% here. But in my survey, it showed about 30% or 49 people who responded. Oh, excellent.
Great. So I think we have a bunch who do follow a lot of ethics. So great to know. And then the ones who do not have it at the moment, it's a great opportunity to maybe look into things like an ethics guide, and we're more than happy to come back to you guys on some of the things that we can do around it. Now, this brings us to the next section of our session today, which is about connections. Now, how to build and continue the connections with students at both pre-enrollment and post-enrollment stage. And I think, again, just going back to universities first would be ideal. So with the university that's really in place, how do you build that connection, both pre-enrollment and post-enrollment? Dr. Santosh, would you like to go first on this?
Yeah, sure. I think it's very important to have a single point of contact for prospective students, mainly to answer their queries, clarify doubts, and to balance their expectations with the realities of the institution or the program that they have applied for. Students apply based on what they have heard outside, but does it really reflect into what the institution really does? And you don't want 4 or 5 years of disappointment later on once they join. And taking that forward, that single point of contact, I think, should handle the student through the application process. And assuming that the student gets in, and I know that counselors are not involved in admission decisions, but let's say the department or the institution recruits the student, and assuming that the admission student gets in post-enrollment, good institutions have mentors, right? So the student gets transferred from the admissions office or the marketing office to the academic office, which is or the student life office, where mentors are assigned to navigate life in college. But ideally, in addition to faculty advisors and peer mentors and so on, I think the pre-enrollment point of contact should continue to engage with the students, at least for a set period of time, mainly to address an ethical issue. Right? Then the counselor may have a business imperative, but then they will be much more realistic about the expectations that they are setting at the conversion stage of the student. And also the counselors knows the student much more than anybody else, because they have engaged with the student for a much longer duration of time than somebody who is being introduced to the student when he joins college. And I think those things, I'm not sure how many institutions do it. In our institution, we transfer the student from the admissions office to the faculty office. Right now, our orientation is going on, but I would love to have this aspect inbuilt into our thing, so that the counselors at least are, formally, I know the counselors do talk to the students after they come in, but at the formal process to be put in place so that these expectations are met. It's very important that we are true to the students about what the institution can offer. Right, and not raise high expectations, or not promise too much on what we can do at the institution. Right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Santosh. I think single point of contact is something which is definitely a takeaway from what you said, and something that most universities or institutions should probably look into. Andrea, would you like to add something from a New Zealand perspective?
Sure, Jugnu. I would like to echo Dr. Santosh's comments on the importance of a single point of contact. So what I find is, as the university representative, I am usually the first person associated with the university that students interact with. Sometimes it's at a school fair, sometimes it's via phone or WhatsApp, sometimes email or a Zoom meeting, but I am the one that handholds, I'm the one that guides them through the admission process. Now, once they have an offer from the university, we actually have different teams that handhold them through the various processes. They all have distinct responsibilities. They all have their own areas of expertise. So once a student has an offer, we have a conversions team and we have course advisors. So the conversions team is there to answer any questions the students have before they enroll in the university. The course advisors are there to help them basically plan out the first year of their degree. Once they've enrolled at the university, we then have a student services support team there. And all of these teams sit under the one international department. So they are able to coordinate very well amongst themselves. And they will say, okay, you know what, you probably have the knowledge that this student needs, or who's the best person to connect the student with here. That said, even once a student has enrolled, I often find that they come back to me as the first point of contact, because I'm the one they've spent the most time with, they're most comfortable. So I'm not going to tell this student, no, I can't help you, you're enrolled now, go to the student services support team instead. I think that when you've made that connection with them, it is very important that you realize that that is a lasting connection, that these are students who might be far from home and far from family members. You're someone familiar to them, you're someone that they rely on to get them the help that they need, and you can then help them from a coordination point of view. So it's quite nice. I have parents of students who enrolled with me 2 or 3 years back who still get in touch and say, you know, Andrea, this thing has happened. Can you please help her out? And I will do my best in all areas. But I think if you can build up that type of a connection with your students and provide that type of support with them, that's where you are upholding your responsibilities. It might not be possible for counsellors and representatives where you might be dealing with thousands of students, but we at least are able to keep it quite small scale and quite personalised for the students who apply and enrolled with us.
Thanks, Andrea. I think it's something to do with your personality as well. You have that really warm, welcoming aura about yourself, and that just makes all of the students feel really at ease and comfortable, and for the parents to also contact. So yeah, that's a great way to sort of show us the transition for students when they are leaving the Indian shores and going to another country. So getting both those perspectives is great for all of the counselors attending today as to how it is different for different types of universities based within India or universities based outside of India. What are the things that you need to consider when you are building those kind of connections? I'll go over to Samir now. Samir, would you like to talk to us about, talk us through how to bridge the gap between schools and universities to make the transition for a student easier when they're going to a university? So again, like things which Andrea mentioned and Dr. Santosh mentioned about, single point of contact or having building that kind of rapport with students. But from a school's perspective, how would you try and bridge those gaps?
I tried doing a survey here as well.
Yeah.
So I think, can we go back to the presentation, please? So I actually divided the whole, do you play an active role in transitioning of students from high school to the university? And I'm very proud to say that a large population does that, at least the respondents. So how do you bridge the gap? I call it a 3-stage process. The first stage is information stage. That means when you're allowing child to make a decision, don't just allow child to make a decision based on what you feel. Allow the child to interact with an alumni of the university, maybe a present student, maybe a professor of the department he's going to. Let child have access to all this information and then make an informed choice. So that is called, for transitioning, I would say, before you help child finalize the university, the right amount of information from different stakeholders is very important. The next is called as pre-departure. Can you make an alumni connection who can be a mentor for that? Alumni, and very proud to say that we are a part of CCN community, and some of members sitting here, we always jump into each other's refuge, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a student from my school. It can be an alumni from India who has a cultural context. And in that case, of course, pre-departure information in terms of universities providing information, doing a session. I know Education USA does great session, and I'm sure other countries follow that as well. And the third is called the purple period. That's my best period, and that's where I form relationships. And I encourage, do you know what is purple period? It's basically a period of a baby's infancy stage from 2 to 4 weeks up to 6 months, when baby cries a lot. It's just exactly what happens when they go to college. They call you back and say, sir, I think I've done a mistake. This is what is happening. So the purple period is when, as a counselor, you're available for that baby who's crying out loud, far away from home. And trust me, best of my students do that. And when you invest in that purple period in that child by addressing his queries, by finding solutions for him, you forge a bond with the child, and you bring a resource for the next child. Because the child will never forget what you did for him as a university representative, as a school representative. So please be available for the child during the purple period. Some of the best practices: alumni mentors, building trust with students and parents, industry exposure. I know Shivnada School does a great job with industry exposure. So how do you prepare them for universities when you do internships in 11th and 12th with them? Starting as early as grade 8, this all feedback has come from my peer schools, encouraging honest conversations. Okay, I'll stop here and allow you to take it. I think I was able to do some quick bit there.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Samir. I think that was really insightful. And all of the counselors, you need to really watch out for that purple period when the students that you've really nurtured are probably behaving like babies. And that sort of brings us to the final section of this session today. I would like to request all the attendees also to feel free to add any questions if they have in the chat box, and we'll try and take them on towards the end of the session. And now to the final section, which is about counseling. And again, definitely the core aspect of relationship building, and all of the conversations that we've had in the early part of this session has been about counseling students in a certain fashion, in a certain form. And Samir, again, I'll probably start off with you. Would you like to tell us, how do schools apply a holistic approach to counseling?
A very interesting question here. I think one of the biggest misnomers of the college counseling is that it's a standalone choice of making a choice about a college. And I think a lot has been discussed. I was making notes for last 3 days. Ms. Anju from Mahatma Gandhi International School talked about helping students find purpose in their life. Colonel Gopal talked about, CEO of Shivnada University, talked about the framework within which we need to do the counseling. And I think Mr. Shikhar talked about resilience. Roshni talked about freedom of exploration. Vineet talked about social connections. And Kevin from Durham University talked about SEL. Kunal from industry talked about ethics and authenticity. And Ms. Abba talks about integrity and moral compass. So where is the counseling here, right? So I think my question is, when around the world educators identify the need of holistic growth, why are we only having conversations around which college, which university, which country? You know, that is something we need to sort of change. And at LSB, I think I give the credit to our executive director, Mr. Saad Seth, who constantly questions our practices. When we think we've done it, he comes and questions it back. And we're developing a holistic curriculum. I'll quickly take you through the framework, and I'm happy to share the resources with you. You know, the question we started with is, do we want our children to be college ready, or do we want our children to be life ready? And one is a subset of the other, and that is the distinguish. If you are a life ready, college is a part of it. But if you're just preparing your child for the college, the life which is waiting ahead for that child is going to throw him off his comfort zone. So I also talked about collaboration between different departments. It was interesting to see what kind of collaboration is happening at school. So this is, now I've opened my cards. The first department I collaborated with when I designed my career counseling curriculum was the EdTech department. These are the digital natives. We assume, we think they know it. We know what happened with the Harvard class of 2016 or 2017, right? Are we doing digital literacy for them? Are we doing digital citizenship for them? We're not, right? They're still going on Instagram and Facebook, and a comment is costing them offer at Harvard and some of the premium league universities. So you need to build a capacity, and I use Common Sense Media Framework. I'll share the link with you, that every single child from 8th to 12th onwards has to understand his responsibility of being a digital native. The second department, any guesses, which do I collaborate with? I collaborate with Life Skills department. So the frameworks I use is UNICEF, UNESCO, and WHO has a 10 core life skills. That's the framework we've identified. We'll look at extensively work and measure the impact in students' life of these trends. The second thing I have been very fond of is personal, social, health, and economic framework of UK. It originated in UK, available, please look up it. So this is the second framework I use, and the last framework we use is the 56 foundational skills listed by McKinsey, which came in June. So I'm updating my curriculum right now, and I'm happy to share with any one of you. So this is the kind of collaboration which is happening, which is talking about the holistic development of a curriculum. And finally, of course, career counseling department. And I talk about 4 A's: awareness, aptitude, ability, and advocacy. Ability you build over a period of time. You do activities around self-awareness. Of course, there is application process, and you not only advocate for your children, children advocate for themselves. So how do you build the process of advocacy through the essay writing, through doing, there is an interesting tool available online. I think it's by UCLA. It's called Purpose Challenge. How do you do that? So we do this 4A framework: awareness, aptitude, ability, and advocacy.
Great.
I will stop there, Jugnu.
Yeah. Thanks, Samir. I think that's again really, really insightful, and it's great that you've done all of this research and have those real life examples that you're able to share with all of our attendees. And yes, it's definitely important to have students be future ready rather than just be ready for the next 2 years or the 3 years. So it's really important as a counselor, as part of the counseling, to imbibe those. And with that, I'll go off to Dr. Santosh. Keeping ethics at the heart of the counseling process, what do you think that the universities should not be doing? Would there be something that you would like to share with us, with our audience today?
Yeah, very simply put, right? And given that it's students' lives and careers that we are talking about, it is best for universities to err on the side of caution. the governing mantra should be under promise and over deliver, right? Don't just to convert the student, don't say stuff that may not be true when the student lands up. And that, I want to go back to Samir's purple period. And that's when, I think many of the expectations that the student had built up, tend to, face reality in that period of time. And they think, this is not what I signed up for. And I think, I don't think, we should minimize the purple period as far as the university is concerned as much as possible, right? We tend to, I think most institutions tend to see withdrawals in the first 2 weeks or first 3 weeks of admission itself, because, there are many things that mismatch. I think as long as we are sure about, as long as we try to mitigate those circumstances beforehand, I think, this is what university should primarily. Don't ever over promise. I would say under promise, and let the university take care of it. Right?
Absolutely. I think that's a good thought. Under promise and over deliver. It's always a great feeling when you sign up for less and you get more. Everyone feels happy. So yeah, and of course, I mean, have the confidence in your institution and your university that yes, you will deliver. So that's a really great thought, Dr. Santosh. Andrea, I would go across to you from a New Zealand university's perspective. What do you think? Would you like to add to what Dr. Santosh has mentioned in terms of what universities should not be doing?
Thanks, Jugnu. I think that what I would encourage universities not to do is don't ignore whether you are a good fit for the student or not. We all look at whether the student is a good fit for our university, but are we what they're looking for? If a student comes to you and they have a very specific plan in mind that I want to do this subject or I want to go towards this career path, you have to first look at what you offer, whether those particular subjects are available for you. If a student has a career plan in mind, do they have a good option at that career in your country or in your city or after graduating from you? Because if a student comes to me and they say, I'd like to be an automobile engineer, I have to tell them honestly, there's no manufacturing industry for cars in New Zealand. You'd be better off going to Germany. If they come to me and they say, I would like to become an economist, I'd like to study economics with you, then I can tell them all about the economics course at the university. I can tell them how great it is, but I should also give them information on what are the actual challenges involved in becoming an economist. I can't say, yeah, you'll straight away go into this position. They have to understand if, for example, there are challenges to entering a certain field, if it's very competitive. If it is competitive, then what things can we advise them to do alongside in order to achieve their chances? So should they take a second major? Should they participate in additional extracurriculars while they're studying at the university as well? So I think universities have to not ignore that holistic approach. They have to see what is this student's goals, what are the learning or career outcomes that they are looking for, and can we effectively deliver that to them? Because as university representatives, we know exactly how powerful word of mouth is in recommendations for future students to study with us as well. And it is better to tell a student that we are not the right university for you. You would be better off considering these options than to have an unhappy student who graduates from you 3 years later and hasn't received what they were looking for.
Absolutely. I think very well said. And what we saw through this entire conversation over the last 20, 30 minutes is that each of you have emphasized on the fact that the student has to be kept in the center of all of this. It is really important to ensure that his interests are being looked into first. It's not the university, it's not the school, it's not the counselor, it's not the representative from the university, but it is the student. He or she needs to be happy. And that's how you form those lasting relationships and lasting thoughts. So I think we are pretty much at the end of our session. And I'd like to go out to all of my panelists. If you have any last thoughts that you would like to share before we open up, and to all of the participants, feel free to add any questions if if you have. We've got a couple of minutes. So panelists, if you have any thoughts that you would like to share, and attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or I think we are on a Zoom meeting, so you can actually ask the question also if you want.
So I think let's leave it for audience to ask any questions if you have. And if you can pull out the slides, yes. Yes. Okay, there's somebody who's raised a hand there on the screen. Let's pin them. Yes.
Hello.
Okay, where?
Yes, this is Kathmandu World School, Nepal. So you muted, so I cannot hear you.
Yes.
You muted?
Hello.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Can hear you. A little faint, but can hear you.
Sure. I'll try to be a little bit more clear. My name is Madhav Nupane, and I'm speaking from Kathmandu World School. And my question is to maybe all the panelists. I'm trying to pick your brain a little bit in this. So when a student comes to your office for the first time with a lot of confusions, right? Not all the students come to your office with clarity. Though they have already landed in the university, there might be confusions regarding subject choices, graduations, majors, and all that. What is the first step that you do outside of all these rules, forms, surveys, psychometric tests, and all that? What is your go-to humane approach? Just trying to get a bit of advice from all of you. Thank you.
So just interesting. I think as counselors and teachers, we are so conditioned to talk. I listen, I smile, I sit down, and I say, talk. You have 15 minutes. And I hold chair tightly and say, I am not going to talk, Samir. I'm just going to listen. Listening is such a deep act of sort of telling somebody that I'm here for you. I am present for you. I'm not judging you. So that's what I do. I generally play nice light music in the background and I say, yes, I'm here to listen to you. Let's chat. So I think that's what I would do. I think psychometric tests and all. And interesting enough, counseling has been considered as a science. It's not a science, it's an art. And you practice, the more you practice, the more proficient you become, and the more you thrown off your guards every time a new problem comes in. So just understand and identify. If you're in doubt, reach out to your peer. I have great peer. I mean, I've called up Smriti sometimes, Shitaja sometime, Anjali sometime. Just pick up and call each other. But I think listen. Don't tell. The child wants himself or herself to be listened, not told. So that's the biggest thing I would give as an advice.
Dr. Santosh, Andrea, would you like to add anything to what Samir's already mentioned?
I think that what my leading question most of the time if a student is confused is, what are they looking to achieve at the end of their education? What type of goals do they want to get out of it? Is it about a particular field of knowledge? Is it about a particular career? Is it about particular experiences? What is at the heart of what the student is looking for? Because I think that once you've understood that, once you've understood what is their number one priority, that is when you can look into, okay, this is the course advice, or this is the destination, or, you know, these are the choices you have to make. But you have to first understand that what is the guiding goal behind what the student wants their advice about.
Absolutely, well said. Dr. Santosh, would you like to add any comments from your end?
Yeah, I just want to echo Samir's point about, are we guiding the students for life, or is it for a particular college to go to? I think Andrea too mentioned the same thing. But, you know, listen to them. They're 16, 17-year-olds. They have come with their own aspirations. But that 15-minute rule is what I'm going to follow from now on. So I think that's a very good suggestion, especially you need to be patient for at least 15 minutes before you jump in with your suggestions. Thanks, Samir, for that.
Yeah, that's a great one, actually. A lot of us can incorporate that in our regular living as well. We have one more question which has come across on the chat, which says, how can schools build a culture of ethics early on and help students follow an ethical path in college applications? So I think it's more around I would think statement of purpose and other documentations or applications that students fill for university admissions. Like, how can that be ethical, and how do schools follow that? We do have like literally under a minute to go. So Samir, do you want to just quickly run us through? And of course, all of our panelists are available later on also. So feel free to connect with them individually to take on this conversation further.
Quick understanding on that. I think you are an ethical and honest school, or you're not. There is a very thin line between that. And I think most of the progressive schools have something called academic integrity policy. We put it in place, and it's very, very evident from there. I mean, I have a very clear understanding of, as a school, I don't support an external application system unless I'm incompetent to do that myself. So I think, I mean, all of us get through this process where we have, I mean, I'm not judging and generalizing all external bodies, but a lot of time when the references come to us, it's not Samir who says, it's the ethical guide which says. So this is my ethics guide, you signed up with the school, this is what the guide says, please be my guest and follow that. So I think having an ethical guide is the answer, whether that's a statement of purpose, whether that's letter of recommendation, inflated resumes, predicted grades, have an ethics policy. And we have academic integrity policy, so we are on the verge of finalizing our ethics policy. We didn't have that, so that's why I'm able to have this conversation, because I've gone through the journey of, having an implicit understanding and subjectively executing it based on the circumstances, which is what I want to warn and guide myself against. Rekha ma'am, also, yes, Anjali has a point to make to this only. Yes, sure.
We keep talking about we keep talking about the design of counseling and the process through which we can help children to get ready for life or college. But a thought that came to my mind while I was going through the various panelists was that life is not led by design always, right? There are so many things, there are so many googlies that life throws at us. And are we taking away the beauty of this organic, natural learning by making everything so cosmetic and design oriented? I don't know. This is just a thought. So there has to be a good halfway house between the two extremes. But sometimes in our effort to be so rule and guideline oriented, we forget the organic aspect of growing and learning and doing various things also. So we need to just be careful as counselors that everything cannot always go by the rule book. As Abha Adam said on the first day, throw the rule book out of the window. And yet Colonel Gopal said, no, we need that rule book sometimes. So.
No, that's a very interesting and pertinent point. I know as a management student, we've been told that you plan, but you plan to fail. So I think that's the simple fundamental philosophy. As a disclaimer, when we meet the students, we tell them that we are not the tailors who are going to design a career path for them. We are going to be equal partners in their experiential journey. However, we still need some stimulus material to sort of tinker their thoughts, because by the end of it, they're 14, 15, 16, 17. And if we don't give the stimulus to them, all they will be governed will be either the societal expectations or parent expectations. So we continue to throw the stimulus by design. So that design is important. But how you rigid about the design is also something you need to guard yourself against. It's just a typical lesson plan. I might just go back where the child asks a question, and here goes my beautifully laid out lesson plan and presentation and videos out of the window. All the TED Talks I planned, it just goes out of the window. It's just the same way. But Rekha ma'am, I think important is to look at the framework, and within that framework have flexibility, and allow children to, and I think failure is such an underrated thing. It's so beautiful to fail because you prepare for life, and our system basically gives you disincentive to fail, right? So how do you allow child to make choices, fail in the journey of 3 to 4 years? That's what I say, start as early as 8. I honestly, if I have a pressure to start in from 6, then I said, then we are going to Fiji route. That, let's start preparing them from grade 5 onwards for careers. No, let them experience life. From grade 8 onwards, start having conversations. Grade 9th onwards, start bringing in experiential, people from the field. Grade 10th onwards, start letting them narrow. Ironically, the world we live in, it's very designed. So somewhere you have to find a midway between the design and the flexibility. I don't know if I answered your question, but I just tried to do that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much, Samir. And I think it's been a really, really engaging conversation. And it's something that we can all maybe keep talking forever. There are so many things for each of us to learn, each of us to sort of workshop and come up with newer ideas, take on from some of the suggestions that each of us have. But unfortunately, that's all that the time
Jugnu,
we
if I
have
can
today.
just ask
We are
Anjali last
almost...
question. Jugnu, if Anjali can be asked last question, she wanted to say something. Sorry.
Sure. Are you Anjali?
Hi.
It is also for parents.
It's
I also
actually
think
a
it's all more
question
for
on
parents.
ethics.
But my question is
Okay,
for
I'm
all
sorry,
the
this is the wrong
counselors
Anjali.
here. Sorry. Yeah.
Are there two people asking?
There's one Anjali on the virtual field.
Sorry,
thing.
Anjali Anand from Huron University.
My question is to all the counselors here, and ethics does not, I echo Dr. Santosh and Andrea's thoughts that ethics is also for university representatives, because they should not talk ill about other universities just because they're not getting the student. That is most important. You need to find that right fit for that too. My question is for all the counselors. I understand the pressure of getting your student into Ivy League. And I've heard some of the counselors tell me, Anjali, nobody knows about your university, nobody will go there. Sorry, I cannot call you for presentation. Okay? How do you handle such issues with schools when you're not exposing your students to what is available? Maybe a student doesn't want to go to Ivy League, maybe they cannot afford it. But if as a counselor, you're not exposing them, how do you handle at that level? Because then I'm at words of loss. What do I tell the thing? Because student for me is not a number, it's a name.
And I can vouch for that.
And I need to sleep at night thinking that I've given the right advice. But how do I handle that at the school level with the school counselors?
And I think it's an important journey we all take. I mean, not just the international university scenario. I think it's contextual to Indian university scenario, where we as counselors are absolutely accused of developing a bias towards, if I have XYZ university, you're most welcome. If this is ABC university, I don't have time. Please wake up, folks. Please understand the concept of right fit. Please advocate for the field you work in, advocate for the children you have under your care, advocate for your partner universities. Just like Anjali mentioned, I know Dr. Barry Craig walked into my campus. How much I'm in love with the philosophy of, community service he's integrated. They want to, and imagine, look at the top 40 under 40. See how many of them have gone to Ivy Leagues. I just want to challenge you. Not more than 15-20% would have gone to Ivy Leagues. Rest all of them would be from any college. So, right? Just go 40 under 40, 30 under 30, 20 under 20 and look at that. I think you'll have your answers.
Great. I think we had somebody virtually, Anjali, who wanted to just ask a question. I know we are running really over time, and I'm conscious of the fact that we're holding you from the next session. But
the email
Anjali,
can be, Anjali, are you there? Okay. Can you go on to the last slide?
So
and put it on the screen?
I guess we are pretty much now at the end of our session. So that's all I'm afraid we have time for. Thank you very much to all of our panelists, Dr. Santosh, Andrea, and Samir, for taking out the time to offer these absolutely amazing insights. I'm pretty sure I'm going to imbibe some of those definitely in my work, my life. And to our audience for helping make this discussion so rich, and finally to the team at IC3 for making today possible. I sincerely hope that we can all meet in person soon, and the next conference is in the real world. But till then, stay safe and stay connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have
you can
a nice
download
day.
the resources by scanning these online. These are all the resources which we've used. And thank you to Aga Khan Academy. They have a beautiful book. The barcode is there. NACAC guide is there. And of course, the PSHE framework and McKinsey report and Common Sense Media link is there. I can upload it.
We can upload this stuff online. So I think IC3 can put it up.
I'll send it to you personally. So that's fine. Sure, that's fine.
Thank you very much and have a nice day. Thanks.
I'll do that. I'll post the entire presentation there. Please do take out time to give your review on the app and give me suggestions how to improve it further. That'll really help us to improve it further. Thank you. Thank you, co-panelists. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.